All right, welcome everybody. My name is Cathy Burrell, and I'm the Client Service Coordinator at WeBC. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that we're gathered here today on the traditional and unceded territory of the Okanagan Syilx people. We recognize, honor, and respect the presence of Indigenous people, past, present, and future. So thank you all for being here today. If you'd like to go on to the chat and just put your first name and what traditional territory you're joining us from, that would be great. If you're not sure what traditional territory you're on, Jen is going to post a map. So it's very informative if you'd like to join us. We serve the entire province of British Columbia, so we always like to know where people are coming from. Last thing to let you know is that at the end of this session, we're going to have a feedback poll. And in the feedback poll, if anybody's interested in a particular webinar, one that we already have not offered, and you want to see us offer it, please go ahead and let us know in the feedback poll what you would like to see, which webinar you would like WeBC to do. All right. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what we offer here at WeBC. We provide support for your small business journey. We offer financing to get your business started and operating capital to fuel your growth. We offer more flexibility than traditional lenders because we take a holistic approach and provide loans based on your business's viability, not based on formulas like a bank does. This means we provide loans to a diverse range of women-owned businesses and support you with integrated services, including complimentary training, mentoring, and business advising for the entire term of your loan. So if you've got a 5-year loan with WeBC, we would offer all of that to you for free. From essential business skills development to personalized business advice, we know the right questions to ask and the right resources to connect you with. In our mentoring programs, you can connect with a network of women entrepreneurs and experts around BC who can support and inspire you. You can learn more about our services at our website, which is we-bc.ca. And we'd love you to sign up for our eBlast newsletter just to get notified of all of our new programs. And as we're coming into September, we have a lot of great things to offer this fall. So go on our website and sign up for our eBlast. All right. So today, I'd like to welcome our panelists, Sarah Ann and Judith. And securing a federal contract is just the beginning. Wondering what comes next? This workshop is going to delve into the essential steps and considerations for winning a contract and learning about key tools and strategies to optimize your performance with the contract to ensure you meet or exceed government expectations. If it's your first contract, you want to make a fabulous impression and get more contracts. We'll explore effective project management techniques, compliance essentials, and teach you sort of how to handle unforeseen challenges efficiently. So thank you very much for joining us today. We'd like to help you in this webinar to ensure the success of your contract from the very beginning right to the finish line. So welcome to Sarah Ann and Judith. I'm going to turn off my slides now and welcome Judith. Welcome Sarah Ann to kick off our program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cathy. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Sarah Ann, and I work, play, and enjoy the unceded territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam. And let me just adjust the interpreter has just appeared on me when we made that shift, so I need to find the interpreter. Obviously, I rely on ASL. So 1 second here, let me get things sorted here while I have my PowerPoint. Give me one. There we go. Okay, excuse me. Yeah, I had to make sure I see the interpreter so I could do this. So they just vanished on me. Anyways, again, on the Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, and Squamish First Nations. And I work for Procurement Assistance Canada, so PAC. I've been there for 2.5 years. I worked with WeBC, and this is our third webinar. The first one of our co-workers did. If you haven't watched that one, Barry, he is a fantastic presenter with PAC. I really encourage you to watch that. If you haven't done a contract with the government before, or you are exploring the ideas of participating in that, look at the 3 steps there. Low dollar value contracts with the federal government. There's a great tips and tools and tricks all there. So I highly recommend watching that. The second one, if the first one made a lot of sense and you enjoyed that, figuring out how to bid, where to start, where to look for that, that's the second session. And so building that capacity with David Kim from BDC, that's a great presentation as well. And if you won that contract, obviously that's a huge accolade. Like, then what do you do? What do you do next? And that's what we're talking about here today. So just want to talk a little bit before I continue with the contract management here. My background, I worked as a tile contractor, ran my own business for a long period of time. I also worked for the BC government. Then I moved over to the federal government. So I don't do work with my tile company anymore. But one thing that I wanted to share is one of the tricks that are really, I guess it's more of a tip, not a trick, but working with my tile company, like, when you go to a customer's home or you do contract with a developer or a general contractor, one of the most important key parts of the work itself is to leave the site, the wrap up to be nice and meticulously clean. And, and as a deaf person myself, I use sign language. So often when a general contractor that I deal with, they are very resistant to working with me because I'm a deaf person and they've never worked with a deaf person before. They're not sure if I even have the ability to do this work. And that's happened a lot in my lifetime. So a lot of hearing people are just like, unsure about it because they can't communicate with me clearly. So what I have to do as a deaf person is to do that job exceedingly well, to make sure that my team communicates well, that I make sure that the team interacts with the contractor or any of the site management to make sure clear communication occurs, as a timeline is being followed. And when that work is done, like, everything is spick and span. You remove all the tiles, you remove all the garbage, you keep it clean daily. And that way, they'll always ask us to come back again. And it works really well. And the one thing that I'll tell you, I guess I'll tell you a few things. A lot of contractors don't do that. They'll leave a mess and they'll take off and they'd be okay with that. But obviously not a good practice and it's not a good feeling. So that's just one piece of advice. So in contract management, it's the same idea in a lot of ways, right? How you manage that contract with the federal government, how you make sure that you leave no mess, is making sure that you're organized, you're communicating on appropriately. So just want to make that comparison. So when you get your first contract, it's obviously important to take that responsibility to look how you're going to manage the contract for that term. Making sure you really read and review the contract obligations, right? What you committed to, being really aware of that. Looking at your statement of work. That's a very key document that's like your commitment to that work. That's what you have to follow. And the quality standards that you mentioned in your bid, making sure you follow that, and contract and managing risk, what things could occur, making sure you manage that risk mitigation as best you can as well. So and of course the relationship is probably the final, the cherry on the pie here, like cherry on the cake, I should say. That is so key with the contract management and with the contracting authority. So for me, as a former tile contractor, I often would get a contract and always set up a meeting with the general contractor just to get those preliminary information cleared up. Same thing with the federal government. if you win a contract, I highly recommend you set up a meeting with the contracting authority. This is not, of course, a requirement, but I think it's a very good idea to build that relationship right off the bat, to have that open communication, to make sure you review all the documentations, everything that's part of that contract. Also, the conditions, the terms of the contract itself, making sure that those are clear and we have the same expectations, making sure the schedule is confirmed, for all sorts of other scheduling things, and all the deliverables as well, right? The reporting is all kind of ready to go, and for the reporting part, obviously I mean, some contracts don't require it, some do require it. It's a range depending on what has come up in that solicitation document that you've won. It'll tell you exactly what to do there, and you have to follow that. Sometimes it includes reporting. So it's a good practice to do reporting, to have that summary and submit it when you need to. Like, think about the contracting authority. They have so many different suppliers that they're dealing with out there, right? And each one has their own way of reporting, their own method of interaction, and so they have to kind of cater to each one of those suppliers, and that can be quite the challenge. So it's really good to ask, like, if they have a standard expectation of reporting, like what do they prefer, to really make their job easier, because that, in the long run, that will help you, right? So figuring out what their structure is, how they do things, and having that clear communication, and how often they want to do that reporting, what kind of information to include in that reporting. Those are key elements. If they perhaps have a template that you could follow, that they could provide you to do that reporting as well. So all important elements. I did, reach out to several contract authorities, and I told them I was going to do a presentation today, and I just reached out to see, what they've seen as common mistakes that have come up in their work, and or just challenges that they've experienced dealing with different suppliers and vendors. And this is the list that we came up with. So communication issues, are one of the top ones. If something comes up, they keep it to themselves, and they try to resolve on their own without communicating with the contracting authority, and then later on that really can go off base. So one example of that with my tile company, this was a while back. I had a tile company for over 20 years. And one of the first, I think it was the first 2 years in business, a tile had fallen off onto the tub from the ceiling, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, what do I do?" Right? I was kind of caught off guard. I wasn't expecting this to happen, and I was a little bit freaked out and didn't know what to do. I wasn't sure who to tell, and I decided to just keep it to myself. I just thought about it for a few days, and it was a big mistake. It was the wrong choice. I should have just let them know right away, because their schedule for timeline, I didn't want to impact that, right? But because they had to call a tub doctor, because they have a tub doctor. If you've never heard of that, they can come out and they can fix the tub, give it time to cure, if that timeline. But if I let them know right away, they could have scheduled that earlier, and that project would have been done earlier, as opposed to being late because I didn't tell them about that, right? And then in fact, it impacted their scheduling for all the other floors, and they weren't able to finish that work, right? So because the tub doctor was coming a few days later, as opposed to like right away. So one of those little things that is so important when something comes up and you don't know how to deal with it, it's a challenge, just communicate with the contracting authority. Let them know what's happening, and be open and transparent, as I'm sure you've heard before. The federal government, they value open and transparent procurement for fair opportunities for everyone, right? And that's the same thing with the suppliers working with the contracting authority, have that fair opportunity to finding a solution together if need be. And if you're not sure, always ask for clarification. Some things are not clear. Ask for clarification just to make sure you have the right understanding and you guys are on the same page. And also decision making, the contracting authority, they have the final decision on certain things. So if you work with them and you don't communicate with them, then it can cause some issues later on as well. So they're kind of the they're the final approval. Like your role and responsibilities are clear from the beginning. When you have that contract, you meet with the contracting authority and clarify what those roles and responsibilities, who takes care of what your obligations are. Like, your company has certain obligations and so does the contracting authority. So making sure that you're on the same page there. If something comes up and it's important to let them know, not to, not tell them and then communication goes awry. But also there's mandatory deliverables, obviously. So you have to include those because they're mandatory. Not You don't just meet one of them and not the others. Like that can cause issues as well, and challenges for the contracting authority to be able to resolve certain things because the client, that this is all for the client. They must have certain things, and if that's not being delivered, then problems occur, right? So also, interesting enough, like, the contracting authority often will say that people say, I wasn't aware of those mandatory requirements. They'll say that after they've won the contract, but it's very clear, clearly stated. That's in the statement of work. So again, that is a key document. These are the things that you're going to do. And that's the required work. So when the contracting authority gets that message, it's very, it's surprising because it's all quite well laid out. Anyways, um, where are we here on this list? So, for that one, I thought I would just, it might not be relevant to Canadian businesses, this next one, but for other countries, I don't know if somebody's joining from the States or another country, um, often there's the registration of also the exchange rate, like if you're selling to a different country, the duties, maybe those requirements weren't met. So there's information there in the supply manual on how to meet those extras. Otherwise, that contract could, affect the timeline and the invoice payments and everything. So it's important to be aware of those as well. And often people will bid, very low and, get the contract and then try to negotiate terms and the price and deliverables later. And I think it's because they think it's important to win and negotiate later, but that doesn't work with the federal government. Just want to make sure that's nice and clear. Once you're committed in, you're stuck with that price, and there's not much room for there's no room for negotiation. So don't expect to have that negotiation later on. Also, I guess in a situation where something's really serious that's come up and you're stuck and it's beyond your control, it's beyond the contracting authority's control, like nature, a natural disaster or emergency, those different scenarios, then there are negotiation, paths there, but typically not often, and only in those key situations. I should have done my homework here, but I think there's 2 or 3 exact exceptions that where you can open negotiations. And some larger projects, like large construction projects, like shipbuilding or ship repair, more of the complex ones, negotiations do occur a little bit more frequently. For sole source contracts, if there's one supplier and they have to meet all the requirements, and that means just only one person can do it, and the price is high, maybe you could ask for a breakdown of the price, and then you can kind of negotiate in those situations. That is possible, but those are more of the unique situations there. Also, invoicing. That's another one. That does it match the terms, or is that off? Like making sure that could delay payments, right? So making sure that you're invoicing what you guys have agreed on, so there's no delays in that sense, or it has to align with the contract terms, obviously. For any of those contracts that the issues have come up and you have to make some changes, it can happen. You never know, right? Life happens. There was one example that I was working with one contract, one project. It was my last project, thank gosh. But that project, it was terrible. It was a ship that had a tile installation in it, and it was supposed to arrive in Vancouver, but it couldn't arrive in Vancouver because there was a fire in the ship. And so they had to investigate first about why this fire happened. So my project was delayed substantially, and that was out of my control, right? I could not, go ahead. There's no way that I could go and install this tile, and the plumbing fittings and everything. All the finishing work, like I had to tile around the finishing work because the plumbing stuff was already done, and so I had to cut so much more work for the tile because the tile wasn't installed first. And that made me miserable. So I had to, type a formal complaint to open negotiations to make some adjustments in the contract because these things were out of my control, and that was agreed upon. And then we were able to go and reschedule to make the modifications to cater to that to the new negotiated terms. But that was just that was my own contract. That was not federal. That was in construction. But um, so yeah, So I filed all those changes and making sure. And then funny enough that when I invoiced, they said no, that wasn't the agreed terms. And then I showed all of the documents that were filed away from our negotiations prior to that, and they agreed to it. And so I went through the proper channels to make it work. And so keeping those documents obviously is very key, because when changes come up and they're just looking at the main originally contracted document and they weren't aware of the negotiations, like you need to keep those documents to be able to prove that, and how and why these negotiated terms changed, and all the formal channels. And finally, really the bottom line for contract management in the cycle of a contract, the life cycle of a contract, is maintaining that communication. I know I said at the beginning that is so key. If there's no communication, and then prior communication makes things go smooth, right? Reducing the conflicts, reducing errors and extra situations you don't have to deal with. So the best solution is to do that as quickly as possible. Communication. Oh, hang on here. Sorry, I put some tips to wrap up here. Just making sure that all of the final deliverables, the dates have all been met. All the expectations that you have or that are mandatory are in the contract have been met. And then, following what you say you will do, right? And following the mandatory requirements and what you say you're going to do, and you should be fine. And providing all the documentations, the certifications, the reports that are required if that contract requires it, and the services you deliver or the products you deliver, making sure that's all there. All the invoice payments are all tidy and handed in. If any financial things that come up that are not quite right, try to identify those and resolve those ahead of time. Asking feedback as well to how to improve how you did your work during that contract life cycle. That's a key one as well. Learning from past contracts and documenting that and filing it away for yourself to how you can improve. And setting up a process so you can make sure you improve it. So now I will hand it over to Judith, who will be talking about vendor performance measurements, VPM, and she'll talk more in depth about how you can measure that vendor performance, and she'll take it from there. And if there's any questions for me before I pass it over, or should we do that at the end, Cathy?
Yeah, if anyone has a question, just go ahead and raise your hand, or go ahead and unmute yourself, and Sarah Ann can take a couple of questions. Okay, I think we're good then. Everyone's thinking.
Okay, sounds great.
Thanks, Sarah Ann. Over to you, Judith. You can go ahead and share your slides whenever you're ready.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Just let me know if you see my screen well.
Yes.
Good. Okay. So thank you to invite me to this event. It's the first time that I participate to that kind of meeting, and to really talk about what we're doing in the government. And I think it's really good. And I can say that Sarah has such a great advice and suggestion, and they are really relevant with what we do in the government. So I've been working for the government for almost 25 years now, and mostly in the procurement area. And I worked on the different kind of procurement all along my career. And the key is really, as Sarah mentioned it, really the communication. It's really where everyone can win about doing business with each other, with the government, is really to maintain this communication and do not hesitate to inform the technical authority, the contracting authority of any issue that you can account during your contract. Also, as Sarah mentioned, it's really important to read your contract. Specifically in the government, this is their own. We have our own contract, and it's really based on that. That really you can make sure that you success on the deliver the product that you have to sell to the government. So I'm sorry, you will understand that my first language is French. So it's really, sometimes I'm looking for my words, so I'm sorry about this, but I will try to do my best on this. So today I'm here to talk about the vendor performance management, which is really new in the government in the sense that we try now to expand this to across the government. So we all know that in different commodities or contracts always have their own requirements, and so we don't. I mean, we see that some contracting authority and technical authority will add in their contracts some kind of performance indicator to make sure that they will reach what they want to accomplish. But now what we try to do is having a kind of baseline of requirement that we would like that having to into our contract to make sure that we have a kind of a standard and make sure that we can deliver the same kind of services and get the same kind of product. So I'm just going to go to the next slide. Let me know if you see what, I think we're all right. So what is the vendor performance management? It's a VPM policy framework. It's really to support fair, balanced, and consistent performance evaluations. As I said, we would like to have, we like to develop the KPI, key performance indicators that are really standard and that we can have in all the contracts that we have. So we need, that means a clear performance expectation will be shared with vendors to ensure that they fully understand how to fulfill their contractual obligations. Performance rating will be used in future bid evaluation processes to incentivize good performance. What this means that we would like to keep, to keep those scores to eventually put in the request for proposal a requirement saying, okay, what we would like to do business in this request for proposal with vendors that have, let's say, 70% score in their previous performance record. So that would be the idea. So standard performance categories such as cost, quality, schedule, and management will support scoring, transparency, and objectivity. So you see the objectives here on the right. It's really to incentivize good performers while helping to hold poor performers accountable. Facilitate open and ongoing communications between Canada and vendor, optimize best value for Canadian, and build a stronger relationship and community with vendors. Sorry, I'm just going to switch a slide. Okay, so how does it actually work? So you see on the left, it's really a relation really between the buyer, client, and vendor. This is where we want really those three working well together, having exchanges during the contract, and make sure that the communication is open all along the duration of the contract. So we have the responsibility here for the buyers, the action that each party has to, the obligation is the solicitation document create, including vendor performance management clauses and sample scorecard. The buyer and the client vendor kickoff meetings. So Sarah, you mentioned it just in your presentation. It will be important to have a kickoff meeting after the contract award, include discussion about the vendor performance management as well as all the requirements that we could find in the contract. The client is here is the public servant that is asking for a commodity or something because they need to go to the industry to obtain the services or goods. So the client will complete the evaluation in regular intervals. So what this means is that we would like to at least have an evaluation during a contract, for example, every 6 months, or if you have a very important milestone, then we could fix the evaluation at that period and make sure that it's fresh for us to do the evaluation and talk about this at the moment it happens. The buyer review the evaluation and send it to the vendor or contractor and make sure that it is really transparent. So when the vendor will receive this his evaluation, there will be no surprise because really the communication is really between the three of them, and they are always on communication and make sure that all the issues or all things that need to be raised have been raised and discussed to improve. So buyer, client, and vendor meet to discuss the evaluation, and the buyer input the vendor performance score and close the contract. So it's just a bit an idea of what it could be.
It's Cathy Burrell. I just wondered if you could clarify. I think up until now, people have thought that the buyer is the government and the vendor is the person that won the contract. But I'm unclear of who the buyer is. Is that the contracting authority?
The buyer is the contracting authority. I clarified this a bit later in the presentation because sometimes we use because there's so different terms in the government. So you can find a term in the policy which is really kind of legal, so contracting authority, and it's more legal way of saying it. But now we try to use words that more common for people. So there's a buyer, the client is the one that needs something, and the vendor is the supplier. So sorry about that. It could be confusing sometimes, but thank you for the question. So the vendor performance contract score will be combined within previous scores to produce a rating by vendor. So that means that during the contract, there will be many evaluations. At the end, you will get a rating, but also you will get a rating for if you have many contracts with the government during a period of time, then you will always have a rating to associate to your business. So that will stay in the system. So what we've done until now about the vendor performance management. So as I said, there's always vendor performance management that it's already existing. I mean, in some contracts, we're already seeing it. Again, it's just a matter to standardize it a bit more. We already have a complete draft pilot policy based on feedback from the industry. and the stakeholders consultation. So we did consultation, we did pilots, we have a meeting with vendors and buyers as well to make sure that it makes sense of what we're doing, and we really had a good feedback. We established a commodity-specific working group to develop materials and KPIs. So we always working to develop better KPIs and scorecard to make sure that it responds to the needs that we have. We launched a pilot refined based on pilot results, what is always ongoing. So now we are expanding the vendor performance management to other groups. So we had some commodity that we worked before during the pilot, but now we're expanding with other commodity, such professional services. You can, and eventually we can have for goods and specific category of goods, constructions and things like that. We're refining and of training and guidance materials, which it is very important to make sure that we can communicate exactly what it is and make sure that people, stakeholders, are well informed and understand what we do. And the development of overall strategy is always ongoing. So this is a bit what we are, where we are right now. So the key of vendor performance elements. So the scorecards with the key performance indicators will be used to evaluate vendor performance, and will include 4 distinct performance evaluation categories. So all contracts will have those performance evaluation categories that will be evaluated during the performance of the contract. So you will have the quality, the cost, management, and schedule. So performance expectation will be clarified, and communication will be improved with all parties, including documentation throughout the contract life cycle. Historical performance information will be used to inform buying decisions, assigning vendors a rating based on their performance over the course of the contract. Communication with vendor at regular intervals throughout the contract will provide vendors input on performance and discuss options to correct inadequate performance. So it's really the essence of it is really to make sure that as soon as a problem occurs, then we can really work together to correct it. And as you know, or maybe not, but in the government, it's really important to, if you cannot reach out the requirement that is in the contract, it's really important to raise it right away, because you cannot negotiate only with the technical authority. It has to be written in the contract. So we have to request an amendment and make sure it's written in the paper and in the contract to make sure to do those, to apply those negotiations that you just had with the public servant with who you work. So the next steps of the vendor performance management is to launch the implementation phase 1. So this is what we're doing right now. It will start in September. So we will apply the vendor performance management with professional services with a little group for now, but eventually we will, we prefer to go step by step and make sure that we get all the information about what it works and what we need to improve. So we want to keep the communication with who use the tool and make sure it works well. So communication with industry partners to ensure the readiness for the BPM initiative implementation. So we plan to really send a message and clarify what are our intent, what we're going to do in the future months about the vendor performance management. Collaboration with the Canada Buy teams as well to integrate scorecard and evaluation in the system and provide a suitable IT solution, because as I mentioned, we want to associate a score, a rating to a vendor after those performance, and eventually we will use it for when we will do our request for proposal, which means that we, as right now, maybe you know, that we use two elements when we do request for proposal to evaluate. We have the technical part and we have the cost part. So we weight those parts depending of the commodity, where it's more important to have more technical part, then we put a weight higher. So we will be sure that actually the technical will be really well evaluated and will make sense, with the need that we have. But eventually, we will also have the vendor performance rating that will take into account to award a new contract. So it will be included in the RFP as well. So if I can go through just a bit or another responsibility, vendor is ready to collaborate with clients, which is the technical authority for another term in the government, to address performance issues over the course of the contract, provide feedback on Canada's contract management practices. So we want to continue to work with vendor and have this feedback about how it works when we do the vendor performance management. Is there any issue that they need to communicate? So we will be there to listen and improve it. So clients, the role of the client will be to evaluate and report on vendor performance, provide feedback to vendor on performance, discuss about options on how a vendor can improve performance in a timely manner, provide performance updates and evaluation to buyers, contracting authority, maintain and nurture open lines of communication with vendors, record and substantiate the result of all performance evaluation and related issues. Discussions. Performance, buyers. Oh, I'm starting to be tired. I'm sorry. So buyers, the role of the buyers will be to communicate the result of evaluation to vendor in a timely manner, provide guidance to client on how to evaluate the performance of vendor, oversee and validate performance scores, maintain open lines of communication with vendors, incorporate BPM standard clauses in RFP and contracts. The vendor performance management team will really maintain and answer the vendor performance framework and provide oversight and guidance to user, ensure data management and integrity, track, analyze, and report on trend and systemic issues related to the policy. So it's about that. So it gives you an idea. Really, we continue on working on communication. It's not just a message to the vendor to communicate really with the contracting authority or buyers or with the technical authority. So it's really also the role of the government to make sure and maintain those open communication with the vendor and make sure that the contracts are successful. So I don't know if there is any question.
I have a question, Judith.
Yes.
I was just wondering, so this system is just about ready, but it's if someone were to win a contract in a month from now, they would essentially be following this sort of framework, as they got the contract. But if somebody got a contract 2 years ago, this wouldn't be something that they would have even known about. Is that correct?
Yes, it's correct. So, but there's always a way to start to do the vendor performance management at any time, because now we are really in the implementation phase, and the score is not is kept. We will keep the score, but we will not use it. So that means that for the time of pilots or expansion, we are gathering how it works and what we need to improve or not. So if a buyer came to us and say we would like to use the vendor performance tool and management and in our contract, yes, We will provide them all the information, and we will inform the vendor, no worries about the score, because the score is really not, we will keep it for our own learning phase, but it's not going to be used for in future RFPs, if I can say.
Right. So it's not like getting 5 stars on Skip the Dishes or 1 star or something, so that everyone is worried how many stars they get.
Yes, exactly. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. But you know, I think accountability is very important in any work, and good for the government for, you know, making us start doing this, because yeah, the bad actors sometimes get awarded the contract because of the size of their company, and we're looking at smaller vendors kind of getting in. So yeah,
Exactly.
no, excellent. Is there any
And,
more questions besides me?
and Sarah here. I just wanted to add one thing that you did mention about pro services, professional services, part of that pilot for VPM. And pro services, if you want to know what that is, it does cover, I did cover some part of my pro services in my previous presentation. If you haven't watched it yet, you can definitely watch it. Pro services, they have some different streams of services that they provide, including, so you can look at what those are for pro services and how to open them up and how to register for that process and everything in regards to pro services. All the information is there ready to go. So it's in my previous presentation, just so you know.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now. If Judith, if you want to stop sharing, and then we've still got a few minutes for other questions, or we can check the chat with everybody. I just want to, of course, thank everybody for being here today. Thank you, Sarah Ann. Thank you, Judith. It was wonderful to, again, go that extra mile with you know, the entire process of getting a government contract, because a lot of people don't like to get started until they know what the complete process is. And I loved Sarah Ann's examples of, you know, sort of what could go wrong sort of idea, like what could happen, because I think for a lot of people, they want to know proactively what to do rather than stumbling onto something and having a big problem. So yeah, I thought it was great. So thank you very much. This has been a great series. And as Sarah Ann mentioned, please take a look at the other two, part 1 and part 2 of this series, because it really does make sense as a group all together about, you know, sort of what's happening. So I will take some questions. I just want to get through mine so that we can, you know, have anything. Is there anything in the chat, Jen? Have you seen any other questions there for anyone?
Nope, no questions in there.
Okay.
Yeah, just talk about the pro services presentation. It's on the WeBC website under the resources, I believe, right, Cathy?
Yes. Yeah.
Building capacity. I think that's there's a recording.
Yes.
The recording's there.
Yeah, we've had these yeah, the 3 parts. I think in the last month or so, that's where you'll find everything. And if you're confused, just send us an email at WeBC and we can certainly guide you to the right ones. But yes, a lot of our webinars are listed in our resources section, and everything, as Sarah Ann was saying, starts with PAC, P-A-C. So you should know, you know, sort of where we're at. I just want to let everybody know that we've got some smart programs that are available on our website for free until the end of the year. And they're quite incredible. You can work through them at your own pace. You've got 90 days to get yourself almost your own workbook on HR for small business, learn more about financial fitness, and end up with a strategic marketing plan at the end of this series. So take a look at our website and go to SMART programs. If you search, they'll be there. Upcoming webinars, we're doing one on September 10th on demystifying grants for small businesses. We're doing information on cash flow, and we're doing reconciliation and resilience, a conversation with Indigenous women entrepreneurs. And, you know, it will be a fascinating panel. So Yeah, and if anyone has any questions, I know this was a lot of information and a lot of new information for people. Please use the Jen has typed in the chat the contact information for Sarah Ann and for Judith, or email us at WeBC. Any of these, you can reach us on our socials as well. I want to thank our panelists again and all of you for joining us today. And don't go right away because Jen is going to put up a feedback poll. Oh, there it is. And we'd love you to fill that in. And if you've got any ideas of any future webinars that you would like to see WeBC put on, we'd love to have your information. And again, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. Be sure to sign up for our eBlast newsletter on our website so you can stay in the loop. Because as I was mentioning, from September to Christmas, it's a really big quarter for us. And we have a lot of really informative webinars that I think you'll be interested in. Yeah, Jen will take another little bit of time to do the feedback poll. And then goodbye to everybody. And thank you so much for our presenters today and everybody that's joined us. Have a great day. Have a great long weekend. And I'm sure we'll see you in September again. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Right. And you're good, Jen, to, yep. End the session whenever people are finished with their comments, which is great to see that we're getting some. Okay, bye everybody. Have a great day.